You think the game is rigged against you. Good. That means you're finally seeing clearly. While others cling to fairy tales of fairness and justice, the truly powerful understand what Machiavelli knew 500 years ago. The world belongs to those who master its ruthless rules, not those who pretend they don't exist. Today, I'll reveal the 18 strategies that separate the players from the played, the same cold logic that built empires and toppled kings. But I warn you, once you see these truths, there's no going back to comfortable illusions. Machiavelli understood one truth about human nature. People are not interested in what is real. They are drawn to what appears real. The world runs not on truth, but on perception. Those who control perception control everything. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." That sentence alone is the foundation of power. The weak crave transparency. They want to be understood, seen, validated. The powerful crave control, and that begins with mystery. When you reveal too much, you give the world the blueprint to destroy you. Your honesty becomes your vulnerability. Your openness becomes a weapon in your enemy's hand. And while you think you're building trust, you're actually giving away leverage. Machiavelli believed that men are fickle, greedy, and self-serving. They will always judge you by what they can see, never by what truly drives you. So the wise must learn the art of the mask. The art of appearing one way while quietly being another. The mask is not deceit. It's protection. It's strategy. The greatest rulers, thinkers, and manipulators of history wore masks so perfect that even their closest allies couldn't see their true intent. Julius Caesar smiled while planning his next conquest. Kings offered peace while preparing armies, and Machiavelli himself served tyrants and republics alike. Not out of loyalty, but out of calculation. You must understand this power demands layers. A mask is not a lie. It is armor. When you step into any room, people must see what you want them to see, not who you really are. If you are ambitious, appear humble. If you are ruthless, appear kind. If you seek domination, appear cooperative. The art of masks allows you to shape perception, and perception is reality. Machiavelli saw that society punishes those who are too direct, too real, too transparent. When you speak your full truth, the world uses it to define and limit you. But when you remain unreadable, people project their own desires onto you. They admire you, fear you, or follow you. Not because they know you, but because they don't. The secret to influence is not to be understood, but to be interpreted. And the more interpretations you create, the more control you hold. The fool exposes his intentions. He declares his plans. He explains his dreams. The wise man conceals them under layers of ambiguity. He lets others guess, wonder, and misread. Because confusion is a quiet form of dominance. When your rivals cannot predict you, they cannot attack you. When they cannot read your next move, they hesitate. And in that hesitation, you win. Think of the great leaders. They rarely showed emotion. They mastered the art of calm expression. You could never tell if they were pleased or furious, weak or confident. Their silence was more powerful than 1,000 words. Machiavelli advised princes to always appear virtuous, but to act according to necessity. You must look like a man of integrity, compassion, and honor, even if behind that mask you are cold, strategic, and calculating. Because appearances create loyalty, and loyalty builds stability. The mask gives you options. When you can switch faces depending on the battlefield, you cannot be cornered. You can blend into any group, adapt to any environment, and survive any betrayal. But the one who refuses to wear a mask, he dies by his own honesty. You might ask, isn't this manipulation? Machiavelli would answer, no, it's wisdom. Because human beings do not live by truth, they live by comfort. They want to believe in appearances that make them feel safe. And if you can craft that appearance, you own their trust. Power is not always taken by force. Sometimes it's earned through illusion. A mask that looks trustworthy can open doors that honesty would never reach. A calm expression can silence opposition without a word. People don't follow the honest, they follow the convincing. So when Machiavelli says, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand," he means that action matters only after appearance has already shaped perception. What people think of you determines how they will treat you. And if you control that thought, you control them. The tragedy of most people is that they are desperate to be known. They reveal everything. Their emotions, their frustrations, their insecurities, believing it makes them authentic. But authenticity without boundaries is self-sabotage. Machiavelli would tell you, authenticity is power only when it's controlled. Be like the moon, never showing the full face at once. Let people see what serves your plan and hide what weakens it. The more layers you build, the safer your core remains. The rule of masks is not about deception. It's about survival in a world that rewards illusion more than truth. Those who wear no masks are devoured by those who wear them well. Because the world doesn't care who you truly are. It only obeys who you appear to be. Machiavelli understood one thing that destroys most people before they ever rise to power: emotion. He saw that men who cannot control their feelings become slaves to them. They react, they overthink, they expose themselves at the exact moment when silence would have given them control. He once wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." But what he meant was deeper. The wise act with reason, not reaction. The fool is pushed by emotion, by fear, by anger, by pride. He burns his advantage trying to prove something. The cold man, the calculating man, keeps his flame hidden until the moment it is needed most. Emotion is a weapon, but only in the hands of those who can master it. If you let it control you, it becomes your executioner. Every time you show frustration, someone learns how to manipulate you. Every time you reveal excitement, someone learns how to bait you. Every time you show fear, someone learns where to strike. Machiavelli knew that emotion makes you predictable, and predictability is death in the game of power. He advised rulers to appear compassionate, but never be governed by compassion, to appear moved, but never moved enough to lose judgment, because power requires the ability to stand still while the world screams around you. He said that a ruler must be both lion and fox, strong when needed, cunning when required. But notice something, both the lion and the fox are calm hunters. They do not chase every noise. They wait, they study, they strike only once. The man who burns with anger strikes too soon. The man who burns with love trusts too quickly. Both lose the crown. To be cold is not to be cruel. It is to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. When everyone else reacts to emotion, betrayal, insult, loss, the cold man observes. He gathers information in silence. He plans while others panic. Because in chaos, reason becomes the rarest form of power. Imagine your enemies shouting, your allies doubting, your plans crumbling. Most people would beg for calm. Machiavelli would demand composure. Because the moment you lose your calm, you lose your ability to command. People follow confidence, not outrage. They trust steadiness, not sensitivity. The man who stays still while the world trembles looks like a god among men. This is why Machiavelli wrote that rulers must learn how not to be good when necessity demands it. What he meant was, detach from the illusions of virtue when they make you weak. Mercy, pity, honesty, all beautiful in theory, but dangerous in practice when they cloud your judgment. If emotion blinds you to strategy, it becomes poison disguised as morality. You must learn to feel without reacting, to observe without absorbing. In power, coldness is not emptiness, it's insulation. It keeps your mind sharp and your actions precise. It protects you from being dragged into the emotional storms that others create to control you. Watch how manipulators operate. They provoke to make you speak, to make you defend, to make you reveal. They know the heated man always tells more than he should. But the cold man, he says nothing. He lets silence choke his enemies. He lets calmness disturb their certainty. They cannot read him, they cannot predict him, and that is his ultimate weapon. The cold man knows that emotion is for private reflection, not public display. The more you show, the less you control. The less you show, the more others project. And that projection gives you power. They will invent meanings, motives, and fears that you never even expressed. And while they try to decipher you, you already control them. In politics, in business, in relationships, the same rule applies. The one who controls emotion controls outcome. Machiavelli lived in an age of chaos. Kings betrayed kings. Allies turned enemies overnight. The only men who survived were those who could keep their faces calm while their world burned. Because panic exposes the heart, and once people see your heart, they know where to stab. He observed that most men are emotional by nature, desperate for approval, afraid of rejection, obsessed with being liked. But power is not built on being liked, it is built on being unshaken. The cold man does not chase validation, he creates inevitability. He doesn't beg to be trusted, he becomes too composed to be questioned. Machiavelli believed that fear and respect are born from consistency. The man who cannot be provoked becomes untouchable. The man who can be provoked loses authority every time he reacts. When someone insults you, silence hurts more than anger. When someone betrays you, distance wounds deeper than revenge. To be cold is to make your control invisible but absolute. The world belongs to those who remain calm when others lose their minds. Because in that stillness, in that quiet control, lies something most people never understand: the power to decide what happens next. Machiavelli didn't teach cruelty, he taught composure. He taught that while emotion burns fast, reason burns forever. The calm ruler lasts longer than the passionate one. The thinker lasts longer than the reactor. The strategist outlives the dreamer. The rule of emotion is simple. The more you control your fire, the longer it lights your path. Machiavelli understood that silence is not emptiness. It is strategy. The most dangerous man in any room is not the one who talks the most. It is the one who listens, the one who absorbs, the one whose silence makes others uneasy. He wrote that a prince must be a great pretender and dissembler, meaning he must learn to conceal his thoughts and reveal only what serves his ambition. Because every word you speak is a thread that someone else can pull to unravel you. In silence, there is mystery, and mystery breeds fear, curiosity, and respect. The loud are easily understood, easily predicted, and easily defeated. But the silent man, the one who smiles while saying nothing, who listens longer than he speaks, who studies while others boast, he becomes unreadable. And what cannot be read cannot be controlled. Machiavelli observed that most people cannot endure silence. They feel the need to explain themselves, to justify, to react. But the wise ruler learns to weaponize silence. He lets others reveal themselves while he remains hidden behind calm stillness. Silence makes others uncomfortable. They rush to fill it with words, and in doing so, they expose their thoughts, their insecurities, their intentions. The fool believes speech is power. The wise know restraint is. Because once your words are out, you cannot control where they travel, how they twist, or who they empower. The silent man speaks only when it strengthens his position, and when he does, every word lands with precision. It's not about talking less. It's about speaking only when silence has already done the work. Machiavelli lived among princes, generals, and traitors. He saw that those who spoke too freely were often betrayed by their own tongues. Secrets are never stolen from the silent, they are offered by the talkative. So he taught that the art of power is not in the speech, but in the pause. A measured word, followed by silence, creates more impact than 100 explanations. He knew that even a false sense of mystery could elevate authority. When people cannot predict what you'll say next, they assume you know more than you do. Their imagination fills the gaps your silence leaves, and they begin to treat you with caution, even reverence. The quiet man becomes a myth. while the loud man becomes a memory. In every court, in every organization, in every human circle, information is currency. The man who cannot control his mouth bankrupts himself. The one who listens gathers wealth. He listens not only to words, but to tone, to hesitation, to contradiction. He reads what others miss because he is not distracted by his own voice. Silence gives you space to see what others reveal in noise. Machiavelli would say that silence is not the absence of power. It is the disguise of it. He advised rulers to speak as little as possible, and when they do, to speak with intention. A short phrase, calm and deliberate, can bend others more effectively than a long speech filled with emotion. The less you say, the more they wonder what you mean, and in that wondering they grant you power. He also understood that silence has an aura. It makes people think before approaching you. It makes them question your motives, your limits, your intelligence. The silent man becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability is one of the purest forms of control. You never show all your weapons. You let others wonder if you even have any. That uncertainty makes them cautious. Most people speak to feel in control, but they are actually losing it. They argue, justify, confess, trying to prove they're right, when in truth, the one who remains quiet owns the situation. Silence draws people in. They start speaking more, trying to win your approval, to earn your reaction, to break your calm. And while they talk, you learn. While they try to decode you, you are already 3 steps ahead. The art of silence also protects dignity. When you argue with a fool, you become one. When you respond to an insult, you confirm your insecurity. Machiavelli would remind you, silence punishes more deeply than words ever could. Because words can be debated, but silence cannot be defeated. It lingers, it unsettles, it whispers that you are beyond reach. To master silence is to master timing. Knowing when to speak is as important as knowing when to wait. Machiavelli believed the greatest leaders were those who understood the rhythm of restraint. They could sit in a council room full of shouting men, remain silent, and still command more authority than anyone there. Because the world always listens more closely to the one who doesn't need to speak. Power is often mistaken for noise, for speeches, for dominance, for visible action. But true power, Machiavelli taught, moves quietly. It whispers through gestures, through presence, through moments when others expected words but received none. Silence is not emptiness, it is controlled energy, condensed influence. When you speak less, your voice carries more weight. When you keep still, your movement shocks. When you stay quiet, your next word becomes an event. That is how influence is built, not through endless explanation, but through the mastery of pause. Machiavelli's world was built on deception, betrayal, and politics. And even in that chaos, he found that silence was the most reliable shield. Because silence cannot be quoted, cannot be misinterpreted, cannot be used against you. It exists outside the reach of manipulation, and in the cold game of power, that makes it the most ruthless weapon of all. Machiavelli understood that most people fight too late. They wait until they are cornered, provoked, desperate, and only then do they react. But by the time you are reacting, the game has already been decided. The wise never fight fair battles. They never fight unprepared. They win long before the sword leaves its sheath. He wrote, "The war is won by the one who prepares while others sleep." For Machiavelli, power was not about courage or strength. It was about foresight. The greatest victories are invisible, silent, and carefully engineered behind the curtain of daily events. The true strategist manipulates the terrain, the alliances, and the minds of others so perfectly that by the time conflict comes, the outcome is already inevitable. Strategy, in its purest form, is the art of anticipation. It is the ability to see 10 moves ahead while everyone else is celebrating their first. Machiavelli studied rulers who understood that the appearance of control mattered more than direct confrontation. A lion roars to prove power. A fox smiles and owns it. The clever ruler doesn't need to crush enemies openly. He isolates them, starves them, cuts their options quietly, until they have no fight left. Machiavelli warned against impulsive action. He said that the ruler must never act out of emotion, but out of necessity. A battle should only be fought when victory is certain, and if it isn't, the battlefield itself must be changed. The unwise fight for pride. The wise rearrange the board so pride becomes unnecessary. That is the art of invisible dominance, the kind that cannot be challenged because it cannot be seen. He observed that fortune, the unpredictable force of life, can be tamed by preparation. The man who waits for luck becomes its slave. The man who plans for chaos becomes its master. Machiavelli advised that you must always be ready for betrayal, for loss, for change. Because only those who expect everything can adapt to anything. Strategy is the opposite of reaction. It is readiness disguised as calm. In the courts of Florence, Machiavelli saw power games unfold daily. He watched men destroyed not because they lacked intelligence, but because they acted too late. They believed loyalty was permanent, alliances were stable, and promises were sacred. He knew better. Promises are words, preparation is survival. He believed that a wise man builds his next move while pretending to rest. While others are distracted by noise, he studies silence. While others argue, he observes. To win before the battle begins means mastering perception. Let your enemies think they are strong. Feed their arrogance. Encourage their overconfidence. A man who believes he is winning reveals his weaknesses without knowing it. Machiavelli would often say that to defeat a rival, you don't attack him, you make him attack you under the illusion that he's in control. When he strikes, he exposes his hand, and you strike last, and you strike with precision. The mind is the first battlefield. If you can control how people think, you never have to fight them physically. You plant doubt in their allies, distrust in their plans, temptation in their loyalty. And when they finally move, it's already too late. They are walking into a trap they built with their own decisions. This is how kings kept their thrones while their rivals burned. Machiavelli believed that direct confrontation should always be the last resort. He admired those who ruled not by force, but by foresight. Because brute strength fades, but intelligent positioning endures. Power is not about domination. It's about control of time, timing, and the flow of consequences. The ruler who acts too soon looks desperate. The one who acts too late looks weak. But the one who moves at the perfect moment looks inevitable. He also taught that appearance is part of strategy. You must look predictable so that your unpredictability strikes deeper. Appear humble while building power. Appear kind while calculating outcomes. Appear still while your plans move like invisible waves beneath the surface. When the moment comes, reveal your intent like lightning. Fast, blinding, irreversible. Most people think strategy is about planning what to do. Machiavelli would say it's more about deciding what not to do. Restraint is part of power. You don't fight every insult, every challenge, every threat. The more you choose your battles, the more weight your actions carry when you finally strike. The strategist doesn't waste his sword. He waits until the enemy's armor cracks on its own. To win before the battle begins means mastering patience. The impulsive want victory now. The strategist creates a situation where victory becomes unavoidable. Machiavelli admired those who could sit in silence for years, moving pieces quietly, aligning people, adjusting timing, until the enemy thought he had peace. And then, in one night, the whole kingdom shifted in their favor. That's not luck. That's design. He wrote that fortune controls half of our fate, but the other half is in our hands. The difference between the weak and the strong is how they use that half. The weak complain about uncertainty. The strong prepare for it. Machiavelli believed that you cannot predict every outcome, but you can position yourself so that no outcome can destroy you. That is what he called invincible readiness. Strategy in Machiavelli's world was not a skill. It was a form of armor. It protected rulers not by defending, but by making them untouchable. When you win before the battle, you never bleed, you never risk, you never even need to explain. Because by the time others understand your move, it's already too late to stop it. Machiavelli understood the dark heart of power, that respect built on love fades, but respect built on fear endures. He wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But people often misunderstand him. He did not mean to be cruel, to be violent, or to rule by terror. He meant that human nature is weak, selfish, and forgetful. Love depends on gratitude, fear depends on survival. And survival, he knew, never forgets. He saw that love is a delicate bond. It breaks when conditions change. People love you when you please them, when you serve them, when you make their lives easier. But the moment you demand accountability, the moment you stop giving, that love turns into resentment. Fear, on the other hand, is constant. It does not rely on emotion. It relies on understanding consequence. People may not always love the powerful, but they will always obey them if they know where the line is drawn. Machiavelli watched rulers destroyed because they wanted to be adored. They tried to please everyone and ended up pleasing no one. A prince who seeks love becomes a servant of perception. He bends, apologizes, explains, until his authority dissolves into familiarity. But a ruler who commands respect through controlled fear never needs to raise his voice. His presence alone sets boundaries. Controlled fear is not brutality. It is clarity. It means making sure people understand that betrayal has a cost, that disobedience has weight, and that your forgiveness is a privilege, not a weakness. When people know where your limits are, and that you will act decisively when they're crossed, they behave differently. They don't play games. They measure their words. They think twice before challenging you. That is how order is maintained without chaos. Machiavelli lived in Florence, a world of shifting alliances and fragile loyalties. He saw how quickly affection could turn into treachery. Friends became conspirators. Allies became assassins. Those who ruled through kindness alone were devoured by those who ruled through fear balanced with reason. Because in politics, kindness without consequence invites manipulation. He believed that mercy should be shown selectively, never to those who mistake it for weakness. The ruler who forgives too often becomes predictable, and predictability invites testing. But when forgiveness is rare, it becomes powerful. People respect what they must earn. Fear reminds them of boundaries they cannot cross. He observed that the truly feared leader rarely needs to punish anyone. The fear of what might happen is enough. It is anticipation that maintains power, not constant enforcement. A single decisive act of strength can create years of peace. That is the beauty of controlled fear. It does not destroy, it disciplines. It shapes behavior without spilling blood. Machiavelli also warned against the extremes of cruelty. He said a ruler must inspire fear, but never hatred, because hatred is emotional, unpredictable, and dangerous. Fear, when managed wisely, creates obedience. Hatred creates rebellion. To be effective, your power must feel inevitable, but never oppressive. When people respect your authority, but still hope for your fairness, you have mastered the balance. He understood that human beings admire what they cannot easily access. The distant, composed, slightly intimidating figure always commands more loyalty than the overly familiar one. Familiarity breeds contempt, distance breeds intrigue. A ruler who keeps just enough distance, who remains calm, unbothered, and slightly mysterious, triggers a form of psychological submission. People assume his restraint comes from strength. They trust his power because they fear its quietness. Fear is not always loud. Sometimes it's a silence that fills the room when you walk in. It's the hesitation before someone lies to you. It's the way others watch their tone when addressing you. That is the kind of fear Machiavelli meant. the invisible pressure that keeps order without needing confrontation. He also saw that love makes people feel equal to you, but fear makes them aware of the gap between you. Power needs that gap. Without it, your words lose weight. When your subordinates see you as one of them, they test your limits. When they see you as something above them, calm, calculating, not easily moved, they follow without question. Machiavelli's rulers understood that fear, when balanced with justice, becomes respect. When people fear disappointing you more than they fear punishment, you have achieved mastery. That is leadership through presence, not intimidation. When your reputation walks into the room before you do, you no longer need to demand authority. It is already granted. In the end, Machiavelli's lesson was not about cruelty but about control. Love is emotional, fear is logical. Love fluctuates with feelings, fear endures through understanding. The wise ruler combines both, love for loyalty, fear for obedience. But if forced to choose, he chooses the one that never betrays him, because Machiavelli knew the harsh truth: love may inspire admiration, but fear ensures order. And without order, even love eventually turns against you. Machiavelli believed that true power was never about competition. Competition, he said, is for those seeking approval, not control. The powerful do not fight for recognition, they create their own category, where no rival can reach them. He understood that the moment you compete, you are admitting equality. You are saying, we are the same. But domination begins when you decide there is no comparison, when you operate in silence, above the noise of others who still fight for attention. He saw that most men waste their strength trying to win battles that should never have been fought. They argue to prove their right. They chase validation from people who have no power to reward them. They fight to be seen rather than to be feared. Machiavelli would call that the behavior of the ordinary. The man who exposes his ambition before he's ready. The man who reveals his hunger for recognition instead of quietly taking control of the entire table. Power does not announce itself. It moves like a shadow, subtle, patient, and deliberate. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler should destroy his enemies completely, not partially, because a half-defeated enemy will always return. He meant that once you decide to act, act with finality. Leave no room for recovery, no space for challenge, no doubt about who commands. But before that act, remain invisible. Do not compete where you can dominate later. He believed that competition makes you reactive, while domination makes you strategic. The competitor looks outward, always watching others, adjusting, responding. The dominator looks inward, crafting, preparing, building systems that make others irrelevant. To dominate quietly means to control outcomes without announcing intention. You do not fight for the crown. You build the throne while others are still sharpening their swords. Machiavelli observed that in politics, the ones who talk about their plans the most are often the ones who never realize them. The true rulers stay quiet. They don't debate. They don't argue. They don't broadcast. They move under layers of silence until suddenly, the power that others thought they owned is no longer theirs. This is why he admired cunning over confrontation, because the cunning man never fights fair, he fights smart. When you compete, you are measured by someone else's standard. When you dominate, you set the standard. That is the difference between the ordinary and the sovereign. The ordinary man works to prove he belongs. The sovereign man makes others work to deserve proximity. Machiavelli's philosophy was built on this truth. Never let others define the game you play. Rewrite the rules. Change the arena. Make your presence the condition for everyone else's success, and they will compete for your approval without realizing you no longer compete for theirs. He also understood the danger of visibility. When you compete openly, you expose your strengths and your weaknesses. The loud man attracts attention, but attention also attracts enemies. The quiet man attracts results, and no one sees how. Power is most stable when it's unseen. It's not the crown that matters, it's the hand that places the crown on another's head. That hand, Machiavelli said, rules without ever needing to be seen. In his time, the wisest rulers were not those who shouted commands, but those whose commands were executed before they were spoken. That's the essence of domination, influence so deeply rooted that obedience becomes instinctive. The people follow not because they fear punishment, but because they no longer imagine an alternative. The dominator doesn't win arguments, he removes the need for them. To dominate quietly, you must master patience. Let others expose themselves through competition, their desires, their weaknesses, their desperation for recognition. Watch them. Learn from their movements. Each time they try to prove something, they show you what they lack. Each time they speak of their plans, they reveal their blind spots. Then, when the moment comes, act with precision. One decisive move is worth more than 100 battles of pride. Machiavelli often wrote that fortune favors the prepared, not the impulsive. He would say that domination is preparation disguised as calm. The ruler who appears still is never stagnant. He's simply waiting for the moment when everything aligns. Power does not rush. It watches. It listens. It plans. And when it moves, it doesn't need to compete, because the field has already been tilted in its favor. Competition seeks recognition from others. Domination commands it. Competition demands energy. Domination conserves it. Machiavelli understood that the ruler who competes with everyone becomes exhausted by the chase. The one who builds his position strategically becomes untouchable, admired even by his rivals. Because the truth is, people respect what they cannot reach. He wrote that a ruler must be feared enough to prevent defiance, but respected enough to ensure loyalty. The same rule applies to domination. Make your power visible enough to be felt, but invisible enough to never be challenged. Be the silent architect of outcomes, not the noisy participant in chaos. Machiavelli believed that to rule effectively, you must eliminate the illusion of competition altogether. Do not lower yourself to battles beneath your stature. When you are provoked, remain silent. When challenged, smile. When doubted, disappear into strategy. Every reaction diminishes your aura. Every silence strengthens it. Because domination isn't about destroying others. It's about making them irrelevant. It's about moving with such clarity, such quiet certainty, that no one even realizes they've already lost. The world follows the one who doesn't beg to be followed, the one who stands so still that others orbit him without understanding why. That is the final truth Machiavelli left behind. Power that must shout to prove itself is already weak. The strongest kind of rule is the one that doesn't compete, doesn't explain, doesn't demand. It simply exists. Calm, silent, and absolute. Machiavelli never taught cruelty. He taught clarity, the kind of clarity that only comes when illusion is stripped away and human nature is seen for what it truly is. He lived among princes, soldiers, traitors, and visionaries, and he realized one truth: fairness is a dream for the powerless, but strategy is the weapon of the wise. The world doesn't reward those who play by noble rules. It rewards those who understand how the rules are made. The strong are not born with power. They build it layer by layer through patience, deception, silence, and cold understanding. Every mask, every plan, every calculated act of restraint is part of a larger game, the game of survival. The weak wait for opportunity. The powerful create it. The weak crave justice. The powerful design outcomes. Machiavelli's wisdom was never about immorality. It was about self-mastery, learning how to think, move, and act without emotion clouding reason. To gain an unfair advantage, you must see people as they are, not as they pretend to be. You must learn when to show virtue and when to hide it. You must know how to strike, when to stay silent, when to charm, and when to disappear completely. Every move must serve a purpose, not the approval of others, but the preservation of your power. The 18 ruthless rules are not instructions for cruelty. They are a manual for survival in a world that disguises manipulation as morality. They teach that kindness must be selective, silence must be strategic, and control must be invisible. Machiavelli believed that life itself is a battlefield, not one of swords and shields, but of minds and motives. And on that battlefield, hesitation is defeat, emotion is vulnerability, and illusion is a weapon. The unfair advantage does not come from luck. It comes from understanding that every man and woman lives by instinct, fear, desire, pride. And if you can master those instincts in yourself, you can predict them in others. That is how kings ruled kingdoms, how leaders shaped empires, and how thinkers like Machiavelli still rule centuries after their death. Because true power doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't beg. It moves quietly, calculating every step, always 2 moves ahead. And as Machiavelli once said, fortune favors the bold, but it obeys the prepared.